Hello, Robert Newman, just in the park. One of the reasons I talk about climate change is that whenever it's being talked about, I feel that people are sort of saying the wrong things. They're sort of thinking that things can be done purely by changing consumption patterns, that we can carry on with this system. I think there's no meaningful response to climate change without massive social change. And everything else is just decadent. It's just trivial, and because not enough attention is given to the social justice implications of climate change, the way that because climate change falls hardest and heaviest on the poor, it magnifies all existing inequalities of power. And so that's the main thing, is that people never talk about climate change in relation to power. When people talk about how politicians can't get re-elected on a platform of asking us to make personal sacrifice, I would think, well, how much of the sacrifice is personal? Because most people's carbon emissions happen when they're at work. And so it's really, you talk about corporate sacrifice, not personal sacrifice. And a politician might get elected if they say you've got to work less hours for the same amount of money as you got before. And most people when they're surveyed have said that they would work less hours, even for less pay, as long as they could rely on someone else not nipping in and getting it. You know, it might be quite a popular measure to say that you have not only a right but a mandatory duty to down tools and walk out the office or factory door as soon as the boss asks you to do something which would be deleterious to the planet. You know, as soon as he asks you to do something that's energy intensive, you've got to go. I mean, you know, what could be fairer and more than that? Firstly, offsets is not reduction. You know, I mean, offsets don't reduce carbon by any. They can reduce carbon by 0%. Usually, end up increasing net carbon. But personal action, that is, people usually talk about that in terms of your personal action as a consumer. And there's a number of problems with that. Firstly is that people are not considering your action as a producer, and again we come back to the fact that most people's carbon emissions happen when they're at work. But also, when it's people's personal action as a consumer, that's political action that's available on the strength of how much money you've got. So if you've got quite a lot of money, like those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, we've got quite a lot of political power. We can take a lot of political action in terms of the things that we choose to buy or not buy. But if you're in, you know, Pilbara in Bangladesh, you don't begin to enter that political arena. You've got no political power as a consumer. When people say, oh, well, there's not much point us doing anything because of what's happening in India and China, it's instructive to ask, well, why is China producing so many things? And one of the reasons is that the EU send all our manufacture and all our factories to China because it's cheaper. Why is it cheaper? Because you don't have to obey all the pesky environmental regulations in the EU. So we just export our carbon emissions to China. You know, it's a way of corporations getting around the democratically imposed environmental regulations. And so a lot of what we call their carbon emissions are made by us. Now, per capita, Indian men and women and Chinese men and women produce much less carbon than just about anybody else on the face of the earth. You know, certainly much less than us, and that's why social justice would be involved in there being carbon rationing that was global and it was per head of population. I think because the politics now has to be led by the science, and that means a firebreak in traditional politics. So it means more than ever, the new forms of organising, such as the inspiring climate camps at Heathrow and then at King's North, and such as sort of grassroots campaigning, become much more important and vital than ever before. And the other reason why direct action campaigns become more important is Gordon Brown said during the plain stupid action when they're occupied the roof. He said decisions should be made in Parliament, not on its roof. But decisions weren't being made in Parliament, decisions were being made in the boardroom of BAA or Ferrovial, being made in emails between E.ON, the German company building the King's North Power Station, and civil servants. It's not being made in Parliament anyway. So it's one of the only ways of filling this democratic deficit is direct action campaigns.